Okay, so let's talk about the cash advance trap. And in this case, I'm not talking about credit cards. That's a whole nother thing. We could talk about that again. Let me know if you want me to talk about that below. But let's talk about these cash advance apps that are out. So recently I had someone ask me about a cash advance app. I had no idea what the app was. I thought it was just like a regular budgeting app or something like that. But when I looked it up, I realized it was a cash advance app. And so I started receiving ads for these different cash advance products on my social media. So have you seen any of these ads for these companies before? Now, initially I was like, why are these showing up for me? But then I remember the conversation I had with the person, and I kind of want to talk about just some of the things, or truthfully, the one thing you really need to keep in mind when it comes to cash advance products. So for me, it's not for me, but I'm not going to tell somebody who knows their situation, right? I don't know your situation. And so I'm not going to tell you don't use this cash advance product. Would I advise you to use it? Not at all, because most of the time people who are using the product, it keeps them in this trap. It's a circle, it's a loop. And for me, it's important to educate you, inform you, however you want to say it, on things you should consider. But this is really just one thing I need you to consider, because every situation is different. You know, somebody might be able to do it and they actually have the money to pay it back and not affect anything else. But the biggest thing you should consider before you take out a cash advance using these products that you can just have the app on your phone is, will you have enough money to pay back this cash advance product and still be able to pay all of your bills and your living expenses for the month? That is something that I don't think a lot of people think about. And I get it, because typically, or I don't even want to say typically, in the case that was brought to my attention and when they asked me about it, was not even a dire need. But this was more so a case of misspending. And it was also a case of not knowing that you have like other options out there. They're not the best options, don't get me wrong, but you won't be stuck in a situation where you may have to pay someone back. So let's look at numbers. Let's take it from the numbers perspective. And this is simple math. I know a lot of people are like, when it comes to money, they're like, I'm not good at math. And I'm like, this is adding and subtraction. This is not any multiplication, none of that. We're not talking about interest, because some of these products I've looked up and I've seen that they don't charge interest. But it does make me wonder how they're making money. But I'm sure there's something there. They're just maybe not considering it as interest. And I'm not going to get in the rabbit hole, because regardless of the fact, the person who asked me and a couple of things that I've saw of people who have done it, in every situation, it was due to them just overspending. They had other options, but they thought this was going to be like an easy option. They didn't think past getting the money and how that would affect them. So let's talk about it from that aspect, right? All right, so I'm going to use like lower numbers. If it's not realistic to your situation, it's not. All you got to do in the same example is plug in what you make, what your expenses are, and then do the math from there, okay? Let's say you make $2,000 a month. That is how much you bring in. Let's say your expenses are $1,800 a month, okay? So you really only have like $200 of extra money every single month. Basically, you're paycheck to paycheck, right? So let's just say something comes up, whether or not you overspend, it's an emergency, whatever, and you take out a cash advance of $500. And let's say you use, I'm not going to say the company's name because I don't want y'all to run into this company, even though I've dropped companies so y'all know who they are. But let's say you run to one of the companies who say there's no interest, no fees company. and you take a $500 cash advance. That's what you qualify for. That's what you get. Now, with the company, they're like, hey, you set the date when we can pull that money back from you to pay us back, right? So let's think about this. You make $2,000 a month. So you got your $500, you're able to take care of whatever you take care of, but you still owe this $500 back. Some of these companies, I know they charge like a little bit of extra, but I'm gonna just go with this one that's simple that claims they don't. But they're gonna be looking for their $500. So you borrow this $500. Mind you, you still only make $2,000 a month. Whatever your situation is, you only can make $2,000 a month, or you don't have a plan of how to bring in more income. Your expenses are $1,800 a month, plus now this extra money that you have to pay. So when it's time to pay the money back, even if they're asking for $120 at that time and then you pay it back in installments, or if they're asking for the whole $500, you're gonna be a little short, because even though you have that extra $200 in between, I guarantee you there's something you're doing with that $200 that you normally do. And so if you haven't pulled back on your expenses in any type of way or cut anything out, you are going to need more money. So in this case, we're just going to go extreme and say, okay, you said you're going to pay them back $500 next month. Well, $500 plus the $1,800 in expenses that you need every month to live is $2,300. You only make $2,000. So you have a deficit of $300 for the month. How are you going to accommodate for that? What are you going to do? So in this case, if you don't have the money and you have no other way of getting additional money, you're probably going to take out another cash advance. And that's the cash advance trap, because you're going to end up being short. So you may take out another cash advance either with the same company or a different company, and you're going to continuously taking out cash advances because you don't have the cash to be able to cover all your expenses plus these new cash advances, and you haven't figured out a way to bring in enough income to accommodate for them. So that's something I really want you to keep in mind, because I don't want you to be in a position where you are continuously in this cycle of taking out cash advances and you may not have enough income to pay them off, because it just basically puts you behind every time. As you can see in our case, now you have $2,300 in expenses and just $2,000 in income. And this is just an example. I know some cash advance companies allow you to make payments or whatever, but regardless of the fact, if you're already paycheck to paycheck, you only have a difference of $200 to live each month just for the extras or whatever, is cutting it pretty close, okay? I want you to consider that, because there's so many other things depending on the situation and what happens that you can do. There's some of your bills that you already pay that may allow you to something up where you can kind of spread out your payment. Now, will that make it rough for you? Probably so, but it's better than kind of getting in this trap of doing a cash advance. And also, it's great to also know like the different ways that you can increase your income, so that if something does happen, you know you have additional income coming in that can help cover that. Even if it's unexpected, if you already have extra income coming in, then you can adjust as necessary. So if you're already kind of like in this cash advance loop or trap, I like to call it, then it's a good time to start evaluating like what all you have to pay, what kind of income can you increase, what can you possibly cut. Sometimes it's rough and there's nothing to cut, so all there is to increase your income. But make sure you figure out what needs to be done so you can start taking action. So as you can see, I'm not a fan of cash advances, but I do want to make sure that you know that you do have other options, and make sure you understand what you should consider, especially now things are getting a little tight for everyone. I don't want you to make your situation worse thinking that you were going to do something to make it better. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that button below. like this video, share it with a friend. And if you are trying to figure out how to get caught up, maybe you have more bills than money, trying to figure out a plan, then check out this video right here.